Hey y'all, welcome to CrossPolitic. This is an interview series that we're working on. And so be sticking around. We're going to be dropping these on Monday, usually on Mondays. And so hope you guys enjoy this kind of CrossPolitic interview with the water boy kind of special. Make sure you guys join us at our Fight Laugh Feast conference coming up in October. Go to fightlaughfeast.com, check that out. And of course, if you guys want to support what we're doing, our efforts, join the Fight Laugh Feast Club. Again, go to fightlaughfeast.com to check that out. We got a lot coming up, a lot going on. The conference, I'm excited to have that in 4 weeks about. We're about 4 weeks away from that. And which is why I'm also glad to bring you my first guest of our interview series, Larry Taunton. Larry Taunton is the author and columnist with bylines in USA Today. I wonder if he still has it. They still keep him around. The Atlantic, Spectator, CNN, and beyond, known for debating leading atheists and Muslims, including Christopher Hitchens. If you guys haven't checked out that debate, check it out. And he's a redeemed former cyclist. Larry blends sharp analysis with hard-won perspective on faith and culture and politics. It's been great to get to know Larry over the years. And Larry, thank you for joining CrossPolitic.
Great to be with you, Gabe. One little correction. It's Taunton.
Taunton. I see the A, and I want to go back to my Texas roots and say Taunton.
Right. It's quite all right. Yep, it's Larry Taunton.
So,
and if you're Phil Vischer, after reading my open letter of a couple of days ago, he would say that guy taunts. So there you go.
That helps me remember it better. Thank you. You're a taunter. You're a mean taunter.
I have been a bit of a provocateur lately.
Yeah. So and we actually might bring that tweet up too. But I want to start. We're going to be talking about education today. Larry's actually speaking at our conference. His title is the Subversive Arrows, kind of pulling from Psalm 127. But also, I put the word subversive in there too because if you guys haven't followed like Larry's journalism, kind of a lot of what he's doing in his international travels and in his journalism here in the U.S. is really subversive journalism. So his talk is Subversive Arrows at our conference. So we're going to talk about Education Day. And Larry, I know a little about you. We've had you on the show. We've had some conversations offline. And how did you didn't educate your kids? You didn't put your kids in the public school system. And back then that was a very novelty idea almost. How did you even get into, as a young adult, young parent, into, I'm not going to send my kids to public school. We're going to homeschool them. How did that thought process begin?
Yeah, it was really quite Branch Davidian, back in those days.
That's right.
It seemed very strange sort of thing to do. But, we were young parents. Our first child was born when we were 21. Michael, we had decided, my wife had done a lot of reading about homeschooling. She'd become a firm proponent in it. Mm-hmm. And she really convinced me of it. I really didn't know much about it. And I said, look, let's try it for a year, which we did. And we decided we'd start him early. And if we liked it, we knew that at that point, economically, private schools were just not an option for us. And, so we gave it a whirl, and I loved it. And I thought, this is not at all what I was expecting it to be. Rather than our lives surrounding our children, our children's lives surrounded the family. Yeah. And you realized how much dead time there was in school. And then you add that to the fact that later, at the time I was in graduate school, and later as I'm traveling around the world and I'm, engaging in, public debates and, a high level symposia with guys like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens. And I'm hanging out at John Lennox's house in Oxford, and I'm, debating over coffee with Peter Singer. I would bring my children along because I wanted my children, there is a mentality these days that kids are central, and I don't like that. On the other hand, there is a place for them to be respectfully present during certain things so that they can learn. A mama bear sits her cubs down and says, you guys sit here while I go and take down that bull moose. And it was great for our children to see engagement with faith.
Yeah.
Furthermore, their ability to travel with me, around the world and eventually as a family. My children all thrived, and they, went on to collegiate excellence.
Yeah. That's great. So, but I guess I feel like I need to even go even further back. Did you grow up a Christian? How was that thought process already? My parents, I'll give you a little bit of my biographical story here. I grew up in Texas, born in 79. So I was being homeschooled in the 80s in Texas at home with my mom and dad. My mom and dad were not first generation Christians, but kind of first generation, Reformed Christians. I grew up in the PCA church. And so my mom and dad homeschooled us. But whenever someone would knock on the door, my mom would make us go into the closet because CPS at that time in Texas could confiscate your kids because homeschooling was illegal.
Yeah.
So there was real ramifications. So you had to have some serious, allegiances to the way of doing that. And at least in Texas, I don't know where you grew up or where you homeschooled your kids, but it had real ramifications. So you had to have real principles behind it too. So how did you get there?
Yeah, well, my mother was, became a believer. Eventually, my father was not.
Okay.
We went to public schools. My father was career soldier, so I grew up on military bases. We were moving, constantly, and so homeschooling I'd never even heard of it, until my adult life. That just wasn't a thing. But I had become convinced, in part because I was in academia and I was seeing what was happening in universities, and then I was teaching in a very elite preparatory school, kind of a Phillips Exeter, sort of institution. And I could see even then, this 30 years ago, the radicalizing, of kids. The indoctrination on, with homosexuality and, sort of this America hating, kind of mentality, and God hating, at its core. And so I wasn't comfortable with where education was going. And when we realized we can do this, and not only that, that we could do it really, really well. And I joke with my friends, who'd say to me, gosh, I don't know, Larry, how you guys homeschool. And I say, you guys are already homeschooling. I mean, you have as much homework every day with your children as my children have school. My kids are done by noon and they're ready to go do other things. And moreover, we could teach them a proper work ethic. Our kids had a responsibility, to do things around the house, to assist with my work. To get involved with things like that. And so the result was that our kids had grown up with a very, kind of Indiana Jones sort of a childhood. And they were used to traveling all over the world, seeing everything and experiencing it. And that was all part of their education. But we found homeschooling quite easy, actually.
Yeah. I've seen, I've thought this way for a long time. I've talked about it, but with the addition of Charlie Kirk's assassination, it's kind of angered me, brought up the need, I think, to double down and repeat this and kind of the way I viewed modern evangelicalism. And I would say I would include PCA in that. I would include Reformed denominations, Reformed Baptists. I wouldn't just peg it to kind of evangelicals that aren't part of a denomination. But it for decades, to me, we have a lack of moral courage in the pulpit.
Yeah.
And the way that has manifested is that pastors, particularly as it applies to our topic, pastors have not warned, its congregation, its sheep, that the public schools are full of wolves.
Yeah.
And if pastors are going to be good shepherds, they have to warn, they have to tell the families, hey, here's where the wolves are at. stay away if you're, or get in front of them, you know, and that hasn't happened. And so we saw, I think particularly really became really clear during COVID, watching how the church shut down, how the church submitted to the government, how the church just limp-wristed when the government told it to sit, when it told them to stand 6 feet apart, when it told them to wear a mask, the church just, you know, went right along with it. Don't do worship. Oh yeah, okay. And so this lack of courage in the pulpit has allowed for so many kids to go, Christian kids to go to the public schools, and where they basically at some level getting indoctrinated and even devoured in the public school system. Last point here, and then I'll kick it over to you, but I think it was like some sort of 2012 study. I've mentioned this on the show before, but the Southern Baptist, this is just the Southern Baptist, SBC, they found that something like 50 to 80% of their kids were losing their faith by their freshman year in college. Well, you went to public school for 12 years. It's not a surprise. It's not even like the universities are destroying their faith, which is also true. But it's like by your freshman year in college, your kids are losing their faith, which means it's the public school education that's indoctrinating them. The public schools get 16,000 hours with your kids, and you might get 3,000 in that environment. So it's no wonder you're losing. So how do you viewing this history of lack of courage in the pulpit as it relates to our public school problems?
Well, I agree with it, but you know, I'm going to go to the parents because at the end of the day, the responsibility lies with the parents. The Lord, you know, said to Eli, you know, your sons made themselves vile, and you did not restrain them. Yeah. And we, you know, what our children are getting from their pastors, from their youth pastors, should be the garnish on the plate. Yeah. The primary instructors, spiritual instructors, and by the way, I don't discount anything you said about the lack of courage. Yeah. But I think parents have been essentially subcontracting the education of their children. That's right. You know, really since the rise of mandatory public education since the 1930s. Yeah. And the result has been, I mean, we see what's happening in our country. And I have to tell you, as engaged as I have been on college campuses speaking or debating or speaking at youth conferences over the years or hosting them, we have hosted many of our own, and our own are a little different because we do them full summers where we're working with kids. I mean, the same kids, you know, for 2.5 months. Yeah. And the idea is that we're really mentoring them and investing in their lives. And it's not just a weekend, you have lectures and of, you know, playing capture the flag. It's something much more intense than that. And as a result, I'm asked by so many parents to speak to their children. Yeah. And it's usually parents who are shocked to discover that their children do not hold their values. So you have conservative, evangelical, Bible-believing parents whose children hold views that are hostile, corrosive to their own views. And they're wondering how you get there. And I always have the very hard job of saying, you know, you on average spend, according to the data, about 15 minutes a day quality time with your kids, if even that, and they are being inundated. Yeah. I mean, it's just like gamma rays, you know, going through their bodies. The degree of saturation of leftist ideology. And listen, the public schools that I attended when I was a kid, and mostly in the South, though not exclusively, were like what most Christian schools are today. Yeah, I was taught the Lord's Prayer in public school. Yeah, we prayed in public school. We had evangelists come and preach on hell in our student assemblies in public school. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I got something very different, and that's not to say that public school was all great, because it wasn't. Mm-hmm. But a lot of parents maybe make assumptions about public school as to what it is now. Yeah, that are completely erroneous. And by the way, even if the indoctrination weren't taking place, you know, the data shows that homeschool kids vastly outpace public school kids and even private and independent school kids.
Yeah.
And that's whether or not the parents are college educated.
Yeah.
I mean, the data bears this out. And so,
Yeah.
you can imagine the kind of questioning I was subjected to when I'm teaching in an elite preparatory school, and I'm not bringing my kids there. My kids are being home educated, and I get free tuition. And that didn't sit well with a lot of people. Why are your kids not here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And of course, I could offer the data, of what was taking place, and our kids, all succeeded, wildly, educationally, speaking. They did very, very well, and that is due to the fact that they were home educated and that they were exposed to the world. And listen, my kids are sinners like anybody else's,
certainly,
but good luck trying to knock them, off of their ideological position. They're all evangelical Christians. They're all conservative Christians. They're all thoughtfully engaged in the culture. They're ready to debate and defend their faith.
Yeah.
And Thanksgiving and Christmas debates are usually about football.
Yeah. That's funny. So I think, and so I'd say I got two. I got a principled problem. I guess I got all my problems with public school education is principled, but my foundational principle problem with public education is that there should be no such thing as public education. The government doesn't have a responsibility. God didn't give the government responsibility to educate our kids. It's not the government's job. It's the family's job, and maybe the church can assist. And I think public schools. So if you look at the history of public schools, basically a bunch of Protestants started the public school system roughly I think the first public school is like 1806 or 1808 or something like that. And then it just kind of grew from there. And then the 1830s, they really kind of started to formalize the public school system. But it was a Protestant driven effort. And so there was this kind of, I think, innocence to the beginning of public schools. But now, and I know, so I grew up in Texas, and I had friends who went to the local rural public school, and the superintendent was a Christian, and the principal was a Christian, and the math teacher was a Christian, and the football coach was a Christian. Is basically some sort of quasi-Christian government school. And so I understand that experience in what you had. But when you give something, when we outsource a responsibility that God says is yours or the family's, it corrupts over time. And so now we're in the situation, in my mind, where I'm at the point where public schools are enemy number one in our country. They are against America. They're against the Constitution. Even if they barely teach it, they're against it. They are transing our kids. They have trans bathrooms for our kids. They don't teach God anymore. They don't pray in schools anymore. They teach ideologies that lead to violence. And I'd say, in some sense, also the Democratic Party, I'm just going to say it here, but I think the Democratic Party is, at this point, a treasonous organization to America.
Well, yes, that's not even really debatable anymore. I mean, if you are a Democrat at this point, you are evil, stupid, or both. I mean, it's just as simple as that. But sorry to interrupt. Continue.
Please, yeah. Well, and I think that's tied into the public schools because they control the public schools. We had, so I was born in 1979. From what I've seen in my lifetime, it's that, I think of my dad's generation, and he went to work for, Texas Instruments. He went to work for Intel. He went to work for Hyundai Semiconductors. And I think my dad's generation, job security was primary because their parents came out of the Depression. And so I think instead of taking risks and being more of an entrepreneur, it was safer to get a job and work for a corporation like Texas Instruments. And so what that meant is we gave all the public school infrastructure over to the liberals. We gave all our journalism over to liberals. You know this. I think the last poll I saw was something like 87% of journalists are Democrats, registered Democrats. And so we kind of left all these public spheres and went to work for job security in some sense. I know it's more complicated than that, but I think that's a fair generalization in the sense that, we need to reclaim public institutions. We need to reclaim infrastructure that is hurt. I mean, CrossPolitic, we got suspended by YouTube something like, 10 times in a year and a half in 2020 and 2021. That kind of infrastructure. And so this goes to the schools, is like they're public enemy number one. The Democrats control the public education, and they're destroying our kids. And then this is not a logical leap. If you murder babies in the womb, there's nothing wrong. There's no logical leap in murdering a 31-year-old man. It's maybe the only difference is like location.
Yeah.
And so these public schools, the reason why they're public enemy number one is because they hate God, they hate America, and they're destroying our kids. To summarize it, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think that's all true, and I think that's been true for decades now. And I think that we have to seriously engage and stop finding excuses. Parents need, first of all, get married young, have kids, and raise them and nurture them in the Lord. I mean, there you go. That's right. That really is part of our mission. And people like finding, listen, a primary excuse that I hear is we can't afford it. Yeah. My wife and I, we were poor. It cracks me up these days. I'll be speaking somewhere like Oxford or some university here, or maybe in my own podcast, and people will say that I'm rich, or that I grew up rich.
Right.
Nothing of the sort. Well, I grew up lower middle class at best. And when my wife and I married, when my wife and I started having children, I was still getting my education. She was a nurse. Yeah. She worked weekends so that we could get insurance. And then I watched the kids, and we never sent our children a single day to daycare. Not once.
Yep.
And so, she worked weekends. I would have the children on the weekends, and then she was home, during the week.
Yeah.
And we decided we would home educate, and we lived off, I think my salary was $28,500. That was it. Yep. And we lived off of that. And I mean, it was the kind of thing where when I'd come home, I remember there's a place I love to stop and get sweet tea. And my wife and I joke about this to this day. We'll all come home with that, and she'll say, "Where did you get money for that? Where did you get money for that?" Yeah. I mean, like like $2.
Yeah.
But we're fishing around in the sofa to find money, to get milk, or whatever it was that we needed. But the point is, you make time and you make money, and you'll prioritize what matters. And we decided that our children and their education, it mattered to us, and we believe the Lord would bless that.
Bring me men to match my mountains. Bring me men to match my plains. Men with empires in their purpose and new eras in their brains. Bring me men to match my prairies, men to match my inland seas, men whose thoughts shall pave a highway up to ampler destinies. Pioneers to cleanse thought's marshlands and to cleanse old error's fen. Bring me men to match my mountains. Bring me, bring me, bring me men. Bring me men to match my forests, strong to fight the storm and beast, branching toward the skyey future, rooted on the feudal past. Bring me men to match my valleys, tolerant of rain and snow, men within whose fruitful purpose time's consummate blooms shall grow. Men to tame the tigerish instincts of the lair and cave and den. Cleanse the dragon slime of nature. Bring me, bring me, bring me men. Bring me men to match my rivers, continent cleansers flowing free, drawn by eternal madness to be mingled with the sea. Men of oceanic impulse, men whose moral currents sweep toward the wide unfolding ocean of an undiscovered deep. Men who feel the strong pulsation of the central sea and then time their currents by its earth throbs. Bring me, bring me, bring me men. New St. Andrews College, training men to build and fight since 1994.
And so Deuteronomy 6:7, which is a verse that will play a role in the talk that I'll give at your conference next month. But, it tells us that we're to speak of them, meaning the law, God's law, to our children when we rise up and when we lie down, when we walk by the way. I mean, this is what we're supposed to do. Yeah. And when I look at this boy, Tyler Robinson, who assassinated Charlie Kirk, a young man that is the age of my own children, and that I met at Mar-a-Lago and enjoyed a very nice dinner with him at my hotel. Yep. I just think that young man who did that, he's been taught to hate. Yeah. He's been radicalized. His parents are conservatives, but he isn't. And why isn't it? Well, for all the reasons that you've just laid out, because he has been taught to hate. He has been radicalized, both online, possibly in his school, I don't know. But clearly something was going on there that the parents really didn't seem to be aware of what was going on. And with our own children, we wanted to make sure that we were the primary influences in our children's lives. Not some Sunday school teacher, not a youth group leader, not a teacher at school.
Not their friends. Yep.
That was not going to be the case. We would be. And that meant that we had to do the hard things. And we ended up really enjoying them. And we enjoy our kids, and now we're enjoying grandchildren. And we're encouraging our children to do the same thing for their kids. Yeah. Make sure they get that. Yeah, because it really, really matters. And if we had been doing it, if Christians have been doing this for decades now, our culture would not be where it is.
What do you think is, if you could, I don't know, hit the easy button or whatever, how would you deal with the public schools and while making sure there's access for those who lost that institutional education or whatever, get educated? What would be your easy button?
What you mean? Like, would I keep the public schools? What do you mean?
Yeah, basically.
Well, no.
How would you?
Listen, I'd get rid of public schools right away, and it's incredible. I think one of the things, Gabe, that I've learned over the years. There are certain things, at least in my part of the country, that you can't criticize without getting a lot of flack from Christians.
Oh, yeah.
One of them is their football team.
Yep.
Another is their church or their denomination.
Yeah.
And another is, unfortunately, another thing I hate, but the sorority or fraternity they belong to. And finally, the school they send their children to. Yeah. And the reason for that is each of those involves sort of a personal choice that they made. They're invested in. And because they're invested in, they sort of feel like they have to defend it. Yeah. And even if you try to gently raise, listen, you've asked me to talk to Junior. You're wondering why he's an atheist. I just want to tell you, it has to do with where you're sending him. You are paying to have your child radicalized against you.
That's right.
You're paying for that.
Yeah.
And the reaction I often get to that is a fierce defense from Christians.
Yeah.
Of public schools. I hate them. I would do away with them. And by the way, I would do away with probably half or more of the Christian schools.
Yeah.
And this is something, I don't know if I said it earlier.
Agreed.
Or I just started to say it. Even if we set aside the radicalizing of kids, let's just say that wasn't happening. I'm incredibly disappointed with the level of education. So that I'm speaking at a university, which, by the way, they didn't shoot me, but almost. I mean, they're getting hostile. I'm speaking. I'm speaking, you know, in a hyperbole here, but they became very hostile. And what was I speaking on? A topic they had asked me to speak on, which was the last chapter of a book that I'd written called Around the World in More Than 80 Days, where I talked about the Declaration of Independence.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm talking to these kids, university students, supposedly they're I forget what they call it, but they're, you know, sort of their advanced level, you know, students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I say, where do we find this? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are. The kids around the room had no idea what I was talking about.
Wow.
They didn't know. And I'm going, well, it's the Declaration of Independence. You know, this is the beginning of the Declaration of Independence, that men are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are, help me out.
Yeah, right.
Life, liberty. And I thought I don't know. Now, sometimes when you teach a lot and speak a lot, as I have and do, you learn body language. Sometimes people don't come up and don't say anything because they're, you know, they're a little anxious or they're nervous.
Certainly.
You can tell they know the answer.
Yep.
In this case, I had the feeling that the majority of kids in that room did not have any idea what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, what in the world are we doing here that these kids are called the advanced level of whatever the subject matter was, and they're so poorly educated? And it also relates to literature, you know. So with our own children, we were, and I guess I don't want to go too much on, you know, this aspect of, you know, exactly what we did in terms of educating our children, but we required a steady stream of essays. Learn to speak, learn to write, learn to write well. And we required them to read superb literature. So our children were reading the Brothers Karamazov, and they were reading War and Peace, and they were reading, you know, Absalom, and they're reading Shakespeare. And then we're having meaningful conversations about the literature, which itself can impart moral understanding, principles, history, things of that nature. And our kids were used to that.
Yeah.
And I just feel that so many kids today, they just don't get it.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, it's amazing, just even the you know, I mean, you remember prayers used to be in school, the Bible used to be in school, and then Christians think we're winning when we can do see you at the poll once a year.
Well, and let me say this, Gabe. I'm 12 years older than you. So I was born in 67. So prayer was out of school long before I came along. But my schools, my public schools, defied that.
Yeah.
And just said, no, we will pray.
Yeah.
We will pray. And we did pray. We prayed before sporting events. We prayed at assemblies. These were all the things. And there were kids who opted out of those things, and the school did not require them, you know, to participate. But the school did make pretty clear, this is what we're doing. This is what we will do. And as I say, you know, the first real preaching of hell I ever heard was in public school, where evangelists were brought in to do sinners in the hands of angry God type stuff. Would have altar calls in public school.
Amazing. And that was that in Alabama? Were you in Alabama?
That was that in particular took place in Alabama. Sure did.
Yeah.
And you know, and almost every time, you know, I was scared to death, and I was ready to give my life to Jesus, you know, about once a year, you know, whenever these kinds of things, you know, would happen.
Yeah.
But the point is that I wasn't educated in schools that were hostile to my country, that were hostile to faith.
Yeah.
They weren't, you know, they weren't hostile to God.
Yeah.
I wasn't being radicalized, and I was being taught proper literature. I was required to receive a proper education.
Yeah.
And I look now at what a lot of kids get, and I think, holy smokes, who knew that in small town Alabama, I was getting what today would be considered a superb education.
Yeah. Wow. So Larry's talk at our conference is Subversive Arrows. And before I get there, I got to add here to read Larry, and then we'll get into that last question there. We as parents are pulling our children out of the failing public school systems, but that's only the beginning. Escaping a broken system doesn't guarantee a successful future. The real battle is making sure our children don't just avoid bad education, but actually receive a good one rooted in truth, wisdom, and excellence. Our children's future hangs in that balance. It really does. And the next step is ours to take. We really exhort you and encourage you. Join us at our Fight Laugh Feast conference. School Wars is the topic this year, as we equip you as growing up in the house, as parents, as educators, as leaders, as single college students who are going to be thinking through these things and coming to these needing to be discipled in these areas in Nashville. So join us in Nashville as we prepare the next generation to think clearly, to live faithfully, and build boldly. The war over education, in some sense, is just beginning. Like, I think the wake up call really started happening in the 80s, and so we're like, we've been dealing with a public school education system for 175 years. And in some sense, we're just starting to fight public enemy number one. So go to fightlaughfeast.com and sign up. You can also booth. There's other things going on that you guys can sign up for. We have a pre-business makers conference there, church leadership luncheon you can sign up for. A bunch of stuff going on. Check it all out, fightlaughfeast.com. So Larry, your talk is titled Subversive Arrows, and kind of pulling from a little bit of Psalm 127, but there's and I know how conference talks goes, especially as things develop into going into the conference. A big change this year was Charlie Kirk's assassination just last week. That affects everything about how I'm thinking about our conference. And so what are you thinking about as you talk about subversive arrows?
Well, I will be making good use of Psalm 127, as you have rightly referenced. Deuteronomy 6:7 is my jumping off point. But, so much of my career has been spent in education, in the academic world, and seeing what's happening with kids. So what people are just, becoming aware of is something that I've been screaming about for 35 years, that this is what's happening, to our youth, to our children. And I want to encourage parents to really engage with their children while laying out a roadmap for that. But I also want to really put down and emphasize the importance of courage. The importance of courage. Listen, my experience with youth, which is extensive, is that they are looking for meaning. They're looking for meaning. They want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. Now, the Lord, knowing that, designed them that way and has given them that. There is mission for each and every one of them, a calling for each and every one of them. But when they're not shown that, they end up dropping anchor in some kind of ism. And that may be feminism, it may be environmentalism or atheism or fascism or lesbianism or whatever. Yeah. But they end up dropping anchor in something else that they feel gives them a sense of purpose and meaning. And I see this all the time, usually between the ages of about 13 and 17, where I see this begin to take place. And that saddens me all the more so because the Lord has a mission for them, and it's for their parents to articulate it and to help them find it. And their generation of kids who are ready to engage for the gospel, but they have to see it modeled for them. Yeah, they have to see it modeled for them. Yeah. And Charlie was modeling that. There are many others, who are doing that. And I have to say this, I don't claim to have known Charlie, intimately. I, as I say, I had dinner with him and liked him very much. But the impression that Charlie made upon me was this. Some people in my line of work, a disappointing aspect of this line of work is that sometimes you meet the celebrity types and they're not. That's right. Off stage, what they are on it. Yep. And I was actually paying attention because Gabe, before the show began, you're engaging, with your staff there, and you're engaging with them respectfully. I have to tell you, I have been in, Fox News and NBC and CNN and Al Jazeera, and I've watched people just abuse the people around them. And I'm thinking, wow, if this were seen by the public, it would just ruin this guy. I mean, what a jerk. There's so many people, who are like that. Our kids are paying attention to what we're doing. And Charlie was a guy who was what he seemed to be on stage is what he was off of it. He was genuine.
Yep.
And he was motivated by mission. And although Charlie wasn't engaging in something that should have been dangerous, he's on stage in a red state.
Yep.
But I think Charlie was prepared to give his life for his faith.
Very much.
And there's something very, very powerful that's modeled to kids in those kinds of things. We have to model it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I 100% agree. I think, I think you explain also why why our generation, kind of Generation X and Generation Z, have really felt Charlie's death in a way that, if thank God this didn't happen, but if Trump would have been assassinated, I think I would have felt that death very differently than Charlie. Charlie wasn't president of the United States. Charlie wasn't Elon Musk, billionaire. Charlie wasn't, never saw himself as a celebrity. And I think that's one of the reasons he came off like he represented us. He came off like just the average guy in a lot of ways, which is why you've seen so many people just say, "Oh, I was friends with Charlie this last week." Charlie had so many friends because he really did not protect his time in a sense that most celebrities would, or he didn't have a wall between him and those he discipled. Basically, he was very much present. I kind of have a similar experience. I was never a real, true, genuine friend of Charlie, but I met him in 2017. I think was the first time, had him on my show, and then 2020, I spoke with him at a conference in Florida. We did a panel together, and then he came on our show again. I knew his pastor, Pastor Rob McCoy, real well. But he was, he treated everybody. He had so many people in his life that have called him friends. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK. I mean, all the way down to people you don't even know. And I think that's one of the reasons why everyone felt like Charlie. When Charlie died, everyone felt like they were shooting at me. And
I think you're right, Gabe. I think that what has appalled people in this case is Charlie's innocence, if I may put it that way. As I told a group that I was speaking at an event yesterday, and during the Q&A, something about Charlie came up. And if Charlie had been killed, let's say in Nigeria, arguably the most dangerous country in the world to be a Christian, according to Congress.
Yeah.
And I think we would process it differently. He'd be no less a Christian martyr, but we would say Charlie went there knowing that martyrdom was a possibility. Erica let her husband go knowing it was a possibility.
Right.
Charlie was prepared. He had processed that, and he was prepared to meet that.
Yeah.
But instead, he was talking to kids, likable guy.
Yeah.
On stage, red state. And this wasn't somebody rushing the stage, with a knife or, people throwing things at him. It was a Butler, Pennsylvania style execution. Yeah. And that, I think, is That's what right. I have a lot of friends who've never heard of Charlie Kirk, had no idea who he was, but who are outraged by this because of those aspects of this. Like, he did what? He was doing what? Yeah. He was on the stage doing what? He was talking about his faith and politics, and somebody shot him in the throat. I think that's and the fact that he was a young man and he was a young father and a young husband, that also adds something to it. And I'm sick and tired of Democrats, carrying on, about how they're now victims. They're now victims. Yeah. Charlie is the victim.
Yeah.
And it's important that Christians know this. Christians are dying at a rate of 100,000 per year, and that for their faith, in what is called a situation of witness. And that translates to 11 Christians per hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And Charlie is among that number. But the others is happening out of sight, and people by and large don't know it, and it's not being reported in our media. It is the largest, as Spectator magazine put it, is the largest unreported catastrophe of our time.
Yeah. Larry, thank you so much for coming on the show. What's the best website you like to leave everybody with, and your favorite place for people to follow you on social media?
Sure, people can go to my YouTube channel at Larry Alex Taunton, and there you'll find my podcast, Ideas Have Consequences. You can also find me on Twitter at Larry Taunton.
All right, everybody, follow him. Go to his website, check out his YouTube channel, follow Larry on Twitter, and he'll be with us. I believe is your wife coming too?
You know who I am bringing? Well, I'm bringing a surprise celebrity guest with me.
Very good.
So someone you will know. In fact, your whole audience will almost certainly know. But he's hanging out with me for the week. And I said, unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately, but I have a speaking engagement and he could go with me.
Yep. He's very welcome. My mom will be sending you an email too about some things that, some dinners and stuff like that, that he's welcome to participate into. So
all right, very good.
Whoever this special celebrity guest is, thank you so much, Larry. Really looking forward to actually meeting you, shaking your hand in a month, and everyone go to fightlaughfeast.com to sign up, and we'll see everybody in Nashville. Lord bless.